Hello, hello, travelers. Welcome in. Today, as you can see, we are doing more Tales with Time. Also, I just realized my iPad is like playing sounds. Okay, oh no, let me turn that off. Yes, we are a little birdie today. But yes, we are back with some more Tales of Time. We're back with uh The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry, which I think most of us quite liked last time. Um I know some of you probably fell asleep, but that is okay. We are currently in chapter 11, and I'm very excited to get back into this book because it was very, very good. Like, it's very good so far. I'm like having a great time with this, honestly. But basically, what happened last time, I will fall asleep in a bit. You're perfectly fine, Skelly. What happened last time was he kept freaking out because he kept seeing visions of things like from this place called the Sunder or Sunder World. So he kept seeing visions of these things. He told his best friend, and his best friend's like, "Okay, so you're going a little crazy, but that's okay. We've dealt with worse." And then they all went out to eat, like him, his best friend's girlfriend, and her two friends. And they went to eat at this like old jungle restaurant, and he saw the raccoon with his tail on fire again, which is a hallucination from the Sunder. And so he's like, I'm gonna follow this raccoon because I'm fucking tired of seeing hallucinations. And it ends up not being a hallucination, and he gets given a like pass by this raccoon. But then his friend finds him, and it's been a wild ride so far. His friend's name is Emmett. That's right, Emmett. But I'm very excited to get back into this. Also, more fun news. I got more of my fish tank done. There will be pictures soon once I get it filled and like plants in it and stuff, and I get my lights and whatnot. But I'm so excited. I've got my tunnels in my fish tunnels, and I've got the some of the sand in. I have to go get black sand tomorrow because the theme is like kind of white tan sand and black sand with some like driftwood and rocks. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, guys. And then we're gonna have a lot of like foliage and aquarium plants. I want to kind of get some lilies, but I don't know. I've heard they're a little bit hard to grow in aquarium water, but I might give it a shot. Just give it a tiny shot because I think they'd look very very pretty in my aquarium. I was thinking I'd also do some like plants coming out the top, but I'm not quite sure if I want to do that yet or not. But we'll see. We'll see. But I'm so excited. And I got a nice new little, not little, a mat for under the fish tank. So it'll be nice and pretty. But yes, I'm so excited. Or a little bit closer to getting the fish. But like after I get like the tank all set up and all the aquascaping done and stuff, I do have to let it cycle for like 2 weeks, and let it actually start building like bioactivity within it. So it usually takes about 2 weeks. It might take longer, it might take less. But a good range is at least 2 weeks before I put like any fish in. And even when I do, I like to space it out, so I'll put probably shrimp and snails in first and see how they do, and then I'll introduce the coolies, and then after the coolies it'll be the tetras, and then it'll be the killifish, and then finally my centerpiece fish, which are the gouramis. So I'm very, so very excited. Here, I literally have been just yapping about it all day. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Again, when the tank is like more completed and all the aquascaping is done, I will be putting pictures, so don't worry, you will not be left out. But yes, hopefully um the plants will grow just fine. I do have to get a special light for that. That's gonna cost me like close to like $200, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll just go broke. But anyway, yes. So for today's thing, let me snooze these little ads real quick. We're gonna go over expectations, of course, for those who are new or who are just popping in, which I think most of you here already know, but still, yeah, $200. Well, there's cheaper options, so I think I'm gonna try and go for a cheaper option because the light I'm looking at right now is called a fluval like aqua skylight, and it's specifically made for aquariums and planted aquariums, but Aqueon, which is another brand, makes the exact same fucking thing, but for cheaper. So I think I'm going to go for that. Hi, Lux. Welcome in. Of course, I'm going to go over the expectations real quick before we jump right in, as I always do before each reading. My expectations, please stay on topic. I forgot. I still haven't changed just ignore all the text underneath it because it's all random shit. Because I was using a template. Maybe. But anyway, stay on topic. Like, I don't mind. I actually don't mind if you guys chat and stuff. But if you're gonna like, just don't spam like dick or something in my chat. As I always say, don't spam any of that shit. Chatting chit chat. Yes. So I don't care if you do that. And all that. That's completely fine. I don't care if you guys talk to each other. Yeah. Get it all out now, guys. Get it all out now. But also, I do have the text-to-speech. I don't know if it's working again or not. It wasn't working last stream yesterday. I don't know if it's working now. Yeah, tits. I don't know if it's working now, but if it is, you guys can totally use that. But please don't just like spam it over and over again in the middle of reading, because I know like not a lot of you really care too much about listening to the reading. It's more of just like a background noise thing, which is completely fine. But some of you do actually listen to the story and want to know what's happening. So when people are spamming the tits, it can get a little too much sometimes. So I don't mind if you do tits. That's fine. Just don't spam it. Also, respect. You may have different opinions about the book, about the story from other people. That is completely fine. Just remember to respect other people's opinions, and they will respect yours. Same with me. We all know I'm not a professional reader. I may stop and I might like give my own commentary on what is fucking happening. Just be warned, I'm not a professional reader, which leads me into the next point. If you want to hear a professional reading of this story, check out the audiobook and also check out the actual book, The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry by Ransom Riggs, which is totally a stage name, or not a stage name, an author name. Pen name, that's what it is, pen name. I was like, what the fuck is it called? It's not stage name, it's pen name. I gotta respect, damn, that's gonna be hard. I will try. I know it's so hard for you, Lux. I know, but you'll get there. I believe in you. I have faith in you. But anyway, make sure you guys are getting all cozy, whether that's in bed, whether that's eating food or drinking something warm or cold, or just sitting and playing video games or something. Just make sure you're comfortable and stuff. And we're gonna hop in. We left off in chapter 11, so yeah, we're in chapter 11 now. Which, yippee yes. And I just explained what had happened in the last one. So basically, he finds the raccoon whose tail was on fire. Which, if you, by the way, I know I've never said this before, but if you want to know what happened before, you can totally just leave the stream and go watch the VOD. It's up on my YouTube. Which I know I never advertise my YouTube, but I do have a YouTube where all my VODs go. If this previous stream is still not up on Twitch, I do have it on my YouTube. You can go back and listen to that if you want, before listening to this, if you want to catch up. If not, that's fine. You might be a little confused. But last time we read, Leopold found his flaming raccoon hallucination, who ended up not being hallucination. And the raccoon gave him, I think it was like a coupon for a ride. Yes, it was a coupon for a ride. A coin for a ride, which like he had talked about like this Sunder and like the story of Sunder because it was a TV show, and he said that the main character had met a flaming coyote that gave him a key to another world, and so this kind of is, I guess, the same except it's a raccoon that's on fire, and he gave him a coin. But anyway, I'm sure that made like zero sense to some of you. That's all right. We're gonna continue reading anyway. I'm gonna hop right in because I've been yapping for a good minute. So we're gonna let me get comfortable myself here. Let me get all cozy up in my chair. I don't have my blanket on my chair, so my freaking thing is cold because it's a leather chair. It's cold. It's chilly. All right. Are we ready? Are we ready, kids? Okay. Sorry. It just made me think of freaking SpongeBob. But anyway. We're gonna jump right in. Let me snooze these ads real quick before I jump right in. There we go. Aye, Pocket. Thank you, Skelly. Thank you for going along with that. All right. Yeah, story time, Fossil. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're gonna hop right in now. You perfect timing. We're literally hopping in right now. But yeah, here we go. Chapter 11. Emmett and Leopold raced down the fallen log stairs and through the ground floor of the restaurant. Leopold's head was a warring clangor of mortification, adrenaline, and a growing conviction that something bizarre but important had just happened. Somewhere behind him he heard Emmett bark, "Get the check and meet us outside," at their table, and Leopold pushed through the main door to find himself briefly alone on the sidewalk. He stood, catching his breath in an eddying cloud of smoke from a taco cart, then held the coin up to a shaft of streetlight. Good for one ride. He hadn't imagined it. A hand grasped his shoulder and spun him around. What the hell happened back there? It was Emmett, winded and puffing. What were you doing upstairs? You almost burned the place down. The token, still clutched in his hand, Leopold saw the exasperation on his friend's face and knew, in his gut, that the best course of action was to lie. Instead, he told Emmett the truth. The story poured out in a jumble. The raccoon, number 24 on the menu, the hidden room in the scene that had come to life, the coin, and the angel's flight, framed through the window in a nearly perfect recreation of one of Sunderworld's opening shots. "Let me see the coin," Emmett said when the story was over. He held out his palm, dubious. Leopold handed it over. After a few seconds of inspection, Emmett's expression mellowed from anger to bemused fascination. "There's a simple explanation for this." Leopold attempted a smile. "I just got invited to Sunder?" Emmett's eyes narrowed. He gave back the coin. The raccoon was obviously an animatronic, and this token was part of some old promotional deal Clifton's used to have with the trolley operator. Like you got a free ride up the hill if you ate at the restaurant and a free cup of coffee at Clifton's if you bought a trolley ride. Also, there used to be this little park with real redwood trees near the top of the hill, which explains the connections between the escape into the majesty of nature stuff and the trolley. Wait, Angel's Flight is a real thing? I thought it was invented for the show. Come on, man. It's a classic piece of LA history. Emmett rolled his eyes, tension leaving his body. The shortest and steepest railway in the country, and the gateway to Bunker Hill, which used to be the fanciest neighborhood in Los Angeles. I'm honestly embarrassed for you that you don't know this. You still haven't read that book I gave you for your birthday? It was 500 pages. Whatever. It had pictures. Emmett turned to face a darkened lot across the street, then pointed. Beyond a chain-link fence, stalled on its track, a short distance from the bottom of the hill, was the red trolley. You've really never noticed it before? We walk past this trash heap every time we come to Clifton's. Oh. Leopold felt stupid. Yeah. Damn. Exactly. Leopold frowned. From their vantage point at street level, the trolley was slightly obscured by palms. I guess I don't look up enough. There's a metaphor in there somewhere. Leopold sighed. So, it's a real thing. It was a real thing, but it hasn't worked in forever. I had another episode, he said, almost trying to convince himself. It was all in my head. Yeah. Emmett still looked a little angry. He tossed a look over his shoulder. And we'll be lucky if they don't call the cops. Leopold felt himself losing this fight, his earlier adrenaline replaced by cold mortification. He hadn't realized until that moment just how much he'd been hoping the token would mean something. That all of it would finally mean something. But what about the trolley I thought I saw when I was driving with my dad? Didn't you say that happened by Carney's? Yeah. Carney's is an old streetcar, just like the Formosa Cafe and the Pacific Dining Car, and like 3 other restaurants around town. You did see one, just wasn't flying across the Sunset Strip. But the raccoon upstairs catching fire, Leopold said, trying again. It was almost identical to the one I saw this morning. Emmett was shaking his head. Tonight was probably the first time that whole Disneyland on acid scene had been switched on in years. That wasn't Sunder trying to tap you on the shoulder. Thumper and Bambi would have caught fire no matter who pulled the rope in the ceiling. Okay, Leopold said, nodding because it was the expected thing to do. The sane thing to do. But inside, he was spiraling. Emmett raised his eyebrows. You need me to point out any more flaws in your logic? They were pacing now, passing in and out of the taco cart's ghostly smoke. No, yes, wait. The raccoon handed me an entry token. Leopold said in a rush. And then, like the scene where the coyote gives Max a key to Sunder, it vanishes in a puff of flame. Emmett finished for him. I thought it was a shower of sparks. No, it was definitely a puff of flame, Emmett insisted. We recreated that scene shot for shot, remember? With the red smoke bomb from the Army-Navy store and everything. Okay, a puff of flame, Leopold said, his mind working. And you don't think it's strange that the same exact thing happened in front of me 5 minutes ago? He held up the coin. An entry token is a kind of key. Look, Emmett sighed, deflating. You had an intense day. When you're already on edge, small coincidences can feel bigger than they really are. I wouldn't call them small. It's not a key, Emmett said slowly, emphasizing each word. Can we at least acknowledge that this has been weird, a little uncanny, slightly out of the fucking ordinary? No. Emmett halted and turned to face him. I'm not going to encourage this. It isn't healthy. You just had a serious episode, and instead of asking for help, you ran off after some malfunctioning raccoon and almost burned down my favorite restaurant. I know, I'm sorry. I think we should recognize that something strange is happening. In your head? Yes, something strange is happening in your head. Just fucking calls him crazy. Damn. Leopold flinched. Come on, man. Listen, I'm sorry, Emmett sighed. The anger seemed to leave him, but not the intensity. I'm not trying to be an asshole, I swear, but I'm not a therapist. Everything I know I learned from the internet or from listening to Mika talk about things her own therapist taught her. I don't know how to help you with this anymore, and I think, Larry, I think you need to talk to Richter about seeing a professional again. I'm worried about you. Leopold nodded, trying to look calm, but he felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Emmett was literally taking a step back from him, and the worst part was that Leopold understood why. He knew how he must have seemed. He knew magic wasn't real, and he knew deep down that Sunder wasn't either. But it was the very fact that he could recognize this cognitive dissonance in himself that gave him pause. Because how could he be so logical and illogical at the same time? Hi, Wind. Oh, and hi, Joy Boy. Well, this is our favorite time, deity. Welcome in, Joy Boy. And hi, Wind. Boot up Elden Ring? Hell yeah. um. Anyway, continuing on. Leopold shoved his trembling hands into his pockets, the metal token biting into his closed fist. If he wasn't careful, he was going to lose Emmett, which somehow felt worse than losing his mind. He took a centering breath and stared across the street at Angel's Flight. The lot below it heaped with trash, its tracks overgrown with weeds, a congregation of grimy palms standing sentinel around its base. The trolley clearly hadn't been operational in years, and it certainly wasn't about to transport him anywhere tonight, token or no token. You're right, Leopold said finally. You're right about all of it. I got wound up today, and instead of resisting the shitstorm, I leaned into it. Old habits. Bad habits. He shook his head. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything before. If it happens again, I will. I promise. You promised before. I mean it this time. Leopold held Leopold held out his hand with the pinky up. Emmett glowered at it. Glowered at it. What's that supposed to be? It's a fucking pinky promise. Emmett stared at him for a moment. Then he slapped Leopold's hand out of the way and pulled him in for a quick, crushing hug. Soon they were both smiling. You're really okay? Emmett asked, gaze narrowing. Yeah, I think I just need to talk through this stuff out loud. Emmett held up his hands. In that case, I hereby acknowledge a small, totally coincidental amount of uncanny weirdness. Now your turn. He nodded at the token still clutched in Leopold's hand. Repeat after me. This is not a key. Leopold rolled his eyes. This is not a key. Emmett pointed to Angel's Flight. This is not an entrance to Sunder. That is not an entrance to Sunder. He poked Leopold in the chest. I, Leopold Barry, am not going to ride Angel's Flight. I, Leopold Barry, am not going to ride Angel's Flight. It doesn't work anyway. Probably a total death trap. I said I'm not going to. Plus, you'd break an ankle trying to hop that fence. I'm not going to ride it. Good. Emmett clapped him on the arm. We good? Leopold nodded. Sorry, I probably got us banned from Clifton's. Oh, you definitely got us banned. It's for the best, though. Their food is going to kill us eventually. Leopold rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. When he looked up, the fake log door to Clifton's had swung open, and Mika and her friends were trailing out onto the sidewalk, holding to-go boxes. What's going on with you two? Mika called out, leading the others toward them at a leisurely pace. Leopold was about to hook up with a red flag, said Emmett, grinning. I had to stop him. Miko raised a skeptical brow at Leopold and his bedraggled appearance. He was he was still wearing the remnants of his ill-fitting three-piece suit. The jacket had been sacrificed to the fire, but his vest, white shirt, and slacks, all wrinkled and soot-stained, continued to do him no favors. She laughed, but in a confused way. Okay. If that's true, said Clark, then why was the waiter so freaked out? He kept asking if you're going to sue. Sue? Leopold raised his eyebrows. Is that why they didn't call the... Oof! Emmett had elbowed him in the gut. Yeah, Jessica went on. He said something about faulty wiring upstairs. Right, exactly, said Emmett, improvising. I told Larry it was a bad idea to take a girl up there. Zero atmosphere. Wasn't even sanitary. Now Mika looked disgusted, and Leopold, whose book of romantic history contained no more than 2 uneventful chapters, was beginning to worry the story was taking a wrong turn. Cheeks flushing, he shot Emmett a warning look and said, All right, that's enough. You're a good friend, Jessica said to Emmett, before turning a sympathetic gaze on Leopold. She was objectively beautiful, so it made sense that she could never remember him. Bad hookups can't fix a bad day, and you, she looked him up and down, you look like you've had a really bad day. Leopold frowned. Yeah. You know, you could be hot if you made an effort, she said, tilting her head at him. You've got great hair. What's your name again? All right, I'm going home, Leopold announced, turning away from Jessica. Emmett looked disappointed. You sure? You could crash at my place tonight. We'll do breakfast at Jerry's. We're going to need a new shitty diner. Leopold shook his head. He knew Richter would blow a gasket when he finally showed his face at home, but he needed to start dealing with his problems instead of running from them. Avoiding the reality of his mom's death was what had started him down the path to this bleak moment, and Leopold was determined to stop repeating the same mistakes. He sure as hell wasn't going to let Richter break his mind. Leopold Barry might have been perfectly average, but he wasn't a fucking coward. Hold on, let me read what you guys said. Do you respect pinky promises? I do. I actually do respect pinky promises. I feel like working in like childcare industry and stuff, if you make a promise, especially to a kid or a youth, you better keep that fucking promise. And if you know you can't make that promise, then you tell them, hey, I can't do that. I feel like promises are very like, well, maybe like for adults, it's a little different, you know, like I still try to keep my promises as best as I can, you know, but like with children, it's like sacred. It's like a sacred thing. Even with like teens and stuff, it's very sacred. But I think once you hit like a certain level of like adulthood, it's harder to maintain promises like the older you get. But I try my best. It doesn't always work out that way, but I try my best. But anyway, that was the end of chapter 11. I grew up watching My Little Pony, and pinky promises are something to take seriously. Yes. Chapter 12 is very fucking short. I've noticed it's literally like not even a whole page long. But anyway, like, so I really can't tell if he's actually like, if he's actually seeing the Sunder or if he's not. Like, I feel like he is, but maybe he's just like, maybe, I don't know. I guess we're gonna figure out if what he's seeing is actually true or if he's just like losing his fucking shit, man. I don't know. We're gonna see. But anyway, we're going on to chapter 12. Let me click that. There we go. All right, here we go. Leopold crossed the street and hurried toward his Volvo. A solitary car hissed by, passing in and out of streetlights as it splashed through the remnants of the afternoon's rain. He was relieved to find Bessie just where he'd left her, windows unbroken. He got in and unlocked the club from his wheel. A lonely siren wailed somewhere in the distance. Drawing in a deep breath, he counted to 5, then slowly exhaled. Today had been shit. Tomorrow he would start over. As he pulled his key from his pocket, he noticed a dark smudge on the vinyl that wrapped the steering column. He frowned and turned on the dome light. There was a second blackened mark below the door handle. Both had been imprinted upon the places his hand had come to rest after he'd imagined, a shower of red sparks. He rubbed his knuckles along the one of the marks, and it smeared. Soot. He felt his face getting hot. His scalp began to tingle. No. Nope. Not again. Never again. He clenched his teeth, fumbling the key into the ignition just as someone rapped hard on the window, startling Leopold so badly he hit his head against the ceiling. It was Emmett. Leopold cranked down the window, his pulse suddenly racing. Streetlight cast a harsh glare across Emmett's shoulders. There was a strange, intense look on his face. "Mr. Barry," he said, his voice grave, "we have a problem." Uh-oh. Well, that was the end of chapter 12, but, uh-oh. They, literally only separated for, 2 minutes, and now there's a fucking problem, so we're gonna see what this problem is. Let me see how long chapter 13 is. Oh my god, these, chapters are ridiculously short, I'm not gonna lie. Yes, because I'm looking at chapter 13, and guess what? It's only a page long. Well, a page and a half long. All right, let's get into it then. I don't really mind the short chapters because I also yap in between a lot. So I feel like it gives me time to read a little bit and then yap about it and then read a little bit more and then yap about it, But anyway, let me take a sip of my drink. These feel like social media posts instead of actual chapters. A little, yeah. I wonder if they get longer throughout. Not really. They kind of stay pretty short and consistent. All right. On to chapter 13. Here we go. I'm wondering if maybe I should just keep reading through them and not stop each time. I probably won't stop each time, but I just wanted to yap a little bit. Sorry. I didn't get to talk much today. I'm a little yappy. Okay. Anyway, continuing. Chapter 13. They stood on the sidewalk. Wait, what were you saying? Hi, lawyer. We're back with the extraordinary disappointments of Leopold Barry. Don't worry, you haven't missed much. Just Emmett debunking Leopold's craziness. Oh, yes, the book about you. Yeah. Okay, anyway, getting into chapter 13 now. They stood on the sidewalk, hands cupped around their eyes, peering through the chain-link fence. Above them loomed Angel's Flight, beyond which they could make out the shadowy, weed-fringed rise of Bunker Hill. Leopold broke the silence. "We've been standing here for a full minute. Are you going to explain why you dragged me back here?" "Just look," Emmett said anxiously, pointing into the gloom. "Halfway up, right side. What do you see?" Leopold squinted. "Crappy apartment buildings?" "And there." Emmett's arm shifted higher and to the left. "What about over there?" "I don't know, man. It's pretty dark. How about a huge building with what looks like a crown on top? The U.S. Bank Tower." "No." "Do you see any tall buildings at all?" He was gesturing toward the crest of the hill now, cloaked in a fine shroud of mist. "There should be a bunch of skyscrapers." "Yeah," Leopold hesitated, then frowned. No, I don't see any of that." "That's what I'm saying. Where the hell did they go?" Leopold blinked at Emmett. "What do you mean?" "What do you mean, what do I mean?" He was getting frustrated. "They're gone." Leopold turned to face his friend. Emmett's eyes were wide, his expression bordering on panic. Emmett was freaking out, and Emmett never freaked out. "Buildings don't just disappear," Leopold said slowly. "Great, yeah, let's make a list of other obvious facts." Emmett shot him a stony look before returning his eyes to the hill. "First, buildings don't just disappear. Second, I know what the downtown LA skyline is supposed to look like. And that's not it." "What are you trying to say? A minute ago, you were giving me the big speech about how all this weirdness was just coincidental. Now you're making me think my episodes are contagious." Emmett was shaking his head. "I realize I just spent hours telling you that that what you've been seeing isn't real, but I'm not seeing, half-human monsters outside motels. This feels like a cosmic problem. I was born and raised in this beautiful, disgusting city, and it's never looked like that." He nodded toward the hill again, then took a deep breath. "There might be more than just a tiny bit of uncanny weirdness happening right now, and I need to know why." A snap of silent lightning split the night sky. They turned at the same time to gaze at Angel's Flight. Inside the trolley, dimly, a light was burning. For a moment, neither boy drew breath. "Holy shit," Leopold said softly. Emmett turned to him. "You still have that token, right?" Chapter 14. Hold up. I gotta switch it. Yep, there we go. Neither of them spoke as they jumped the flimsy fence, the sound of metal jangling as they landed on the filthy ground. They navigated a maze of garbage, then ran up 50 feet of steep, rutted tracks to the back of Angel's flight. They stood together on its rear step, winded and grasping a rusted rail as they peered through its door, open to the elements. They exchanged a look before ducking inside, Emmett leading the way. A single bulb in a wire cage cast weak light from the ceiling. 2 rows of scarred wooden benches faced off across a long aisle of stairs, rising from one end of the car to the other at a 45-degree angle. Trash lay in scattered heaps. Crumpled newspapers, piles of clothing, empty cans. Graffiti crawled across the cracked windows. At the high end of the car, beside the operator's seat, was a panel of levers and switches. "Here," Emmett called, jogging up the steps, Leopold close behind him. "There's got to be a place to drop the token somewhere." "Wait," Leopold hesitated, gazing at the token in his hand. The bulb above them flickered. Moonlight slanted through the trolley, illuminating movement among the trash. A rat skittering across the aisle. "This doesn't feel right." Emmett turned back to face him. "What do you mean?" Leopold swayed, briefly, before catching himself against one of the hard benches. Something slick smeared his sleeve, and a slither of revulsion shuddered through him. He stared again at the token. This was everything he'd wanted for so long. Emmett was all but admitting that Sunder might be real, that they might be on the precipice of discovering a world he'd dreamed about for years. But it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Max, of Max's adventures in Sunderworld, had ridden Angel's flight. Yes, but he hadn't been forced to jump a chain-link fence and tear a hole through his shirt to reach it. He hadn't waded through piles of filth or described the ride to Sunder as smelling vaguely of dried vomit and urine. The door beneath the overpass had led straight to a clean, orderly trolley station where a friendly conductor had been waiting to escort him onto Angel's flight. "You okay?" Emmett prompted. "You ready?" Where was the friendly conductor? The welcome delegation? Then again, when would Leopold have another chance like this? A moment where he and Emmett were aligned, both of them ready to take a risk on Sunder at the same time. "Yeah," Leopold said, his chest constricting. "Yeah, okay. I'm ready." They crowded around the switch panel. There it was, beside a big brass lever. A coin slot. Pale blue light pulsed dimly within. Leopold refused to overthink it. Steadying the slight tremor in his hand, he lifted the token to the slot and let it drop. He heard Emmett's breath catch just as the ceiling light went out, and they were plunged, all at once, into darkness. Immediately, the floorboards began to vibrate, and a series of loud, startling clanks resounded beneath their feet. Before either of them could speak, the trolley shuddered violently into motion. They stumbled and fell onto the benches behind them, so that they were facing one another across the aisle. A sharp crackle issued from ancient speakers in the ceiling, followed by a tiny recorded voice. "Welcome aboard Angel's Flight. We're glad you could join us. To ensure your safety, please ensure all hands, arms, limbs, and other appendages remain fully inside the conveyance." Leopold could have sworn it was the same even-toned voice that had narrated the scene upstairs in Clifton's. With another bone-rattling jolt, they were grinded up the hill, the trolley tilting precariously to one side as it picked up speed. Find something to hang on to," Emmett said urgently, his eyes tracking the darkened windows. Leopold grabbed one of the handrails, his palms slick and clammy. "Emmett, when you said this thing was a death trap, you were exaggerating, right?" Emmett shook his head. I fucking can't talk, Jesus. "A few years ago, the trolley fell off its tracks and killed a bunch of tourists." A knot of dread was expanding in Leopold's chest. "Did they fix it? Does it look like they fixed it? Why do you think it was fenced off?" The tram was fairly rocketing up the hill now, squealing and clattering as it went. I like when you go, ooh. a little ear tingles. A little ear tingled sound. Where was I? Oh, the tram was fairly rocketing up the hill now, squealing and clattering as it went, wheels barely clinging to the weed-choked scribble of track. Leopold searched frantically for an emergency brake in the dark. There was a sudden, dramatic pressure change, a sharp pain building in Leopold's ears before they finally popped, then a stomach-churning moment of weightlessness. It felt, briefly, like the trolley had lifted off the ground, and Leopold, who never got motion sickness, thought he might throw up. Through the windows, he could make out a passing impression of shadowy buildings and what seemed to be a grove of tall, thick-trunked trees. And then, with a jolt, they were slowing, only their tight grip on the handrails preventing them from being thrown to the floor. There was a dissonant chorus of brakes, and with a long shriek of protest, they came to a stop. Finally, it was quiet. Chapter 15. Leopold rose unsteadily to his feet. From the trolley's cracked windows he could see, through settling coils of dust, a small platform that extended to white-tiled walls. They were in some kind of station. The speakers in the ceiling crackled, and a door to one side of the operator's seat folded up with a sudden slap. "Thank you for riding Angel's Flight. Please take a moment to collect your belongings before disembarking, and don't forget to—" The last few words were garbled, and then the speakers fell silent. Leopold and Emmett stumbled off of the trolley in a daze, the shoes kicking bits of trash from the steps as they descended onto the platform. The station was pungent and dilapidated. The floor was layered with grime. A row of broken benches lay tipped in a corner. The high ceiling was arched with curving wooden beams, skinned in dust and cobwebs, through which the few glass domed lights still working cast a hesitant greenish glow. The desolate place would have been the worst kind of disappointment, except for two words, faintly illuminated on the wall in front of them, rendered in blocky blue tile. Sunder Hill. "Bro," Emmett said quietly, his eyes fixed on the sign as he backhanded Leopold in the chest. Leopold absorbed the blow, blinking hard. He tapped the floor with his foot. It felt solid. The sound echoed. He was pretty sure he wasn't dreaming. "What the hell?" he whispered. They heard a distant car horn and turned toward the sound. It had come from a corridor blocked by a turnstile, from which other city noises murmured faintly. Emmett cocked his head toward this corridor, and Leopold nodded. Wordlessly they crossed the station, their shoes leaving tracks in the dust. Emmett pushed through the turnstile, its metal teeth revolving with a sharp click-clack. As Leopold took his turn, he saw a small analog counter in the stanchion flip from one unreadable, runic-looking character to another. He reached out and slid a hand along the wall tiles as they went, feeling their coolness. The corridor ramped upward, and as they followed its gently spiraling path, a golden pink light became visible ahead. The city sounds grew louder. Another horn. A siren rose and quickly faded. It's odd. Song-like wail strangely familiar. They came to a halt at an arched doorway just beyond where a city street and a strip of sky. Pink sky. The boys traded a heavy, loaded look. Emmett took the first step out into the unknown, and after a moment, Leopold followed. Oh, I forgot. We're in chapter 16 now. Apparently I did not prepare the slides for the next couple of them, so we're just gonna pretend that says 16. We're gonna pretend that says 16. But anyway, so they did end up going to Sunder, which I wasn't sure, because in the beginning, it just made him seem like he was crazy, and I was like, okay, I kind of dig, like, the idea that maybe he's just saying this all, but no, they actually went to Sunder, both Emmett and him, which is very interesting. And I guess we get to see what Sunder is like now. Again, these chapters are really short, so I kind of bulldozed through a couple of them, which I think I think I'll do them in threes. So we'll read like 16, 17, 18, and then we'll talk about the chapters, and then we'll go 19, 20, whatever. You know what I'm saying. But anyway, yeah, we're going to pretend that 15 is actually a 16 because I did not end up putting more slides. Oops. I didn't come as prepared as I thought I was, but that's okay. You know. Anyway, chapter 16. They couldn't stop staring at the sky. When they'd boarded Angel's Flight, it had been fully dark here. Oh, it had been fully dark. Here, the sky was a dusky pinkish gold. Above the flats of downtown, from which they'd recently arrived, the heavens were a black canvas brushed with moonlit clouds. If he squinted, Leopold could see the outlines of squat buildings gleaming down there in the night, distant constellations of windows lit from within. But up here, at this eerie trolley station atop the hill, an island of cottony pink luster hovered overhead, bathing the palm-fringed streets around them in a soft, shadowless glow. Leopold realized, with a sudden jolt and a subsequent shiver, that he'd seen this phenomenon before. He'd seen it in an episode of Sunderworld. Drawing a tight breath, he turned to stare at a 3-story apartment building directly across the street, all stained glass and curving turquoise tilework. This, too, he recognized. You know what I just thought of? And correct me if you think I'm wrong. So he originally learned about Sunderworld from tapes that his mom had. And it was about this boy named Max who went to Sunderworld in pretty much like this a similar way that Leopold is going through. And like this Max character was apparently like welcomed by Sunderworld and was known as like a super powerful like being within that world. This might be a little cliche, but what if the mom having tapes of this world of Sunderworld and of this specific character is because like maybe the mom is also from Sunderworld and she knew this dude, and maybe Leopold's actually the son of this dude, and that's why that's why Richter fucking hates him or some shit. No, it's just a theory, guys. It's just a theory, but like it's a cliche theory. Like it's very like plot twisty cliche theory, but I'm gonna throw that out there. I'm gonna think on it. Just think on it. Anyway, continuing on. Drawing a tight breath, he turned to stare at a 3-story apartment building directly across the street, all stained glass and curving turquoise tilework. This, too, he recognized. "You're seeing what I'm seeing?" Emmett asked, his voice faint. Leopold's face was tingling as he croaked. "Yeah." It was an Art Deco masterpiece floating 30 feet off the ground, pipes and wires dangling from the foundation. A few elderly cars were parked in a gravel lot underneath it, their owners apparently unconcerned about their vehicles being crushed. "Alta Vista Hotel," read the large electric sign in front. "Come for the value, stay for the views." Emmett laughed nervously. Leopold pivoted, only to find that his friend was already yards away, turning in circles to take it all in. Along the street, the salmon-hued clouds emerged with a block-long ride of color and light. Flashing marquees, glaring billboards, and glimmering shop windows, all competing for the overtaxed attention. An enormous long-finned car from another era whooshed by, but there didn't seem to be anyone at the wheel. Leopold's eyes darted from one shiny thing to another. A window sign that read, "Accounting, Tax Preparation, Divination," beside a neon crystal ball. A store called Best Quality Magic Doors and Portal Repair, Inc. A shaggy-haired man in sunglasses whistling as he passed them, taking what appeared to be a bush for a walk on a leash. Leopold tripped along after Emmett, absorbing the scene with dizzy wonder. There was a cafe filled with water, chairs and tables bobbing like pool toys near the ceiling, rivulets escaping under the door and running across the sidewalk. The 7 C's, read the gilt-etched window, closed for maintenance. A woman in a high-collared coat brushed past, pursued by 3 shopping bags. It felt like he'd stumbled into an old recurring dream, dizzyingly strange but uncannily familiar, too. The edges and details gone fuzzy. He was certain he'd never been here before, yet the many bizarre sights bombarding him didn't feel entirely alien. A shop window across the street caught his eye. "Emmett," he practically shouted, pointing at its neon sign. "Is that Norm's Magipon?" Emmett jogged over in stunned slow motion, his eyes wide as he turned to look. "Shut the hell up." Spotlighted in the window was a mannequin holding what looked like a sagging shadow over its shoulder. The sign beside it read, "Portable hole, gently used, ask about financing." Emmett pressed his nose against the window. "I always wanted one of those," he said, breath fogging the glass. A wild-haired man in a huge brown cardigan came suddenly into view. "We're closed," he shouted from inside, rapping sharply on the window. "Come back tomorrow." Emmett jumped back so quickly he nearly sprained an ankle. When he'd recovered his balance, the 2 boys bolted down the sidewalk. After a brief sprint, they collapsed against another building. Leopold felt an inappropriate giggle building in his chest. He covered his mouth, but he couldn't be contained. "Larry," Emmett said, his tone a warning. "Pull yourself together." "I can't," Leopold shook his head, a high-pitched laugh escaping. I'm freaking out. "Me too." Leopold made an effort to calm himself, but he couldn't stop shaking his head. You don't understand. I promised myself I would move past this, that I wouldn't lean into into the visions anymore. Another theory, I could be wrong. Maybe he's still hallucinating. Maybe this isn't real. Because it's odd that Leopold suddenly appeared again after they had just said goodbye and was like, bro, actually, I totally believe in you now. And then they're going on this adventure together. I don't know. Anyway, Emmett picked up a discarded soda can from the ground, then turned the label for Leopold to see. Aetherblast was printed on it in bold letters. You think this is a vision? He squinted at the fine print. Extends casting effectiveness up to 3 hours. You're telling me this is fake? Yes? Emmett tossed the can away. It rattled across the pavement. I'm the logical one, Larry. He poked himself in the chest. And logically speaking, 2 people can't hallucinate the same thing at the same time. We're in L.A., Leopold tossed up his hand, sounding a little desperate even to himself. What's more likely? That we're in Sunder, that magic is real and my childhood fantasy has come true, or that we're on some weird, elaborate studio backlot? I don't know. Emmett's gaze had fixed on a nearby storefront. On its roof stood a massive lighted T. The letter by itself made no sense, but the jaunty neon sign on the door was simple enough to understand. Information. But there's one way to find out. Chapter 17. The place was small, just a short counter fanned with colorful pamphlets, a few posters on the wall. Experience the Sunderhoods of SoCal. Take a trip via Tumbleport. A gentle thrumming sound emanated from a short corridor at the back. There didn't seem to be anyone around. Leopold noticed a desk bell on the counter and gave it a tap. It let out a surprisingly loud, resonant ding. After a moment, they heard what sounded like footsteps approaching. Not from the corridor, but underground. From the center of the room came the loud clack of a bolt sliding. The loud clack of a bolt sliding. A door in the floor swung open on a squeaking hinge, and then the top few rungs of a ladder rose up as if on a spring. What? Emmett said, pointing, but that was all he could manage before a hand appeared on the ladder, followed by a red-sleeved arm and a head with a matching red cap atop it. Then a whole person was climbing out of the floor, a young man in what appeared to be a bellhop's uniform. Keep the coffee hot, he called down the ladder. He dumped an armload of pamphlets into a box under the counter, shoved the ladder back down with one foot, and kicked the door shut with a bang. With all this accomplished, he pulled his jacket straight, nudging the cap of his head to a slight angle, and turned to face them with a chipper smile. Sorry to keep you folks waiting. You caught me on my 2-minute break. He laughed to show it was no big deal. Name's Art, he said, tapping the name tag on his jacket. And you've just arrived, if I'm not mistaken. Emmett balked. How'd you know? I can always tell, Art said with a wink. Something in the eyes stunned by the majesty of it all. Or the noise and the smog, depending on where you're from. Or where you're in from. Where are you in from, if you don't mind me asking? In from? Echoed Leopold. Which Sunder, I mean to say. Emmett began. We're just from regular old Iowa, Leopold interjected, instincts advising him to lie. The Iowa one? Art squinted, then snapped his fingers. Right, Dubuque. Sometimes I forget we have Sunders out in flyover country. No offense meant and none taken, I hope. Not a big spark community, Dubuque. Though I suppose none are compared to good old Los Angeles. He pronounced it, Angeles? Oh, Los Angeles. Biggest and best in the whole U.S., though I'm biased, of course. Either of you been to Sunder Hill before? They both shook their heads. Well, on behalf of the Department of Enter-Sunder Corporation and Commerce, welcome in. You caught us short-staffed today, but I'm happy to give you the nickel tour. So if you've got any questions, he pointed to a button on his jacket that read, Ask Me. Leopold cleared his throat. Well, he cleared his throat again. I guess, just to be clear, we're definitely in, he laughed nervously, Sunder world right now. Art frowned. You mean Sunder Hill? Yeah, Emmett shot Leopold a look. Sunder Hill, that's what we meant. Art peered curiously at the boys, as if sensing something was off. Yes, this is... He was interrupted by a loud bang, which drew Leopold's attention down the short rear corridor, where he glimpsed a few large industrial-looking washers and dryers and adjacent room. There's a laundromat back there? Said Leopold. I thought this was an information post. Information post slash tumbleport station, Art corrected. Not technically a laundromat, though there was enough confusion on the matter that we decided to offer the option. Washers and dryers down that aisle, tumbleports over there. He nodded toward the connecting room. Leopold craned his neck to get a better look. Tumbleports had figured briefly in an episode of Sunderworld. An old lady dozed beside one in a plastic chair, the curls of her blue perm vibrating against the whirring machine. Now, pardon my confusion, Art went on, his brow furrowed, but if you came all the way from Dubuque and didn't arrive via Tumbleport, he nodded again at the machines, then how did you... Leopold startled as one of the tumbleports flew open, releasing a cloud of gray smoke. A middle-aged man in a suit crawled out, coughing and swearing. Damn thing's defective. Art rushed over to help him. Leopold and Emmett shifting for a better view of the commotion. The man was covered in mud and cobwebs. He stood up furiously, trying to brush off his clothes, while Art fussed over him. Let me help you, sir. Get off me, you imbecile. I had an important meeting in, Poughkeepsie. Ended up in Madagascar. 6 hours in the jungle. Missed the whole conference. Ruined my best traveling suit. I'm so very sorry, sir. Do you know how big the insects are in Madagascar? He cried. Art wrung his hands. I don't, sir, but I'm sure the Department of Transportation will pay for your suit and be cleaned. A lot of good that'll do me. I already missed the meeting, and that's not the worst of it. Look at my focuser. He reached into the machine and pulled out what looked like a smashed camera lens. This was a Leica. Lisa? Leica? I don't know how to say it. Leica. Leopold stared. He dreamed his whole young life of owning a focuser like that. He and Emmett had made countless prop versions from old magnifying glasses and broken thrift store telescopes. I'm sure you'll be compensated, sir. I want this problem fixed. Do you think I have time to cross the country on a damned airplane? He was scraping clumps of mud from his clothes and tossing them at Art's feet. I suppose they'll blame it on the Aether drought, like everything else. Well, I'm sick of it. Don't I pay my taxes? This place is falling apart. With that, he stormed toward the exit without so much as a glance at Leopold and Emmett. Slamming the door so hard, a banner fell off the wall. Leopold read it before it folded over on itself. Keep L.A. magical. Be Aetherwise. Aether, even a casual fan of Sunderworld knew, was the fuel without which spells could not be cast and magical objects could not function. It occurred naturally in trace moments in the air, the rain, certain floods, and bodies of sparks, but the most potent variety was drilled from the deposits buried deep in the earth. Art turned to face them, looking sheepish. I'm terribly sorry you had to witness that. He produced a small sign from his jacket that read, Out of the Aether, and went to set it on the broken machine. Leopold and Emmett traded nervous looks. They didn't know anything about an Aether drought, but it was clear they needed to leave before Art started asking more questions they couldn't answer. Well, we better get out of your way, Leopold said. I'm sure you've got a lot to do. Now wait a second, said Art. We didn't finish the tour. Emmett was shaking his head as they backed toward the door. Sorry, we're meeting friends for, dinner. Oh, Art said, straightening. I see. He studied the boys, a trace of suspicion still lingering in his eyes. Then, glancing once more at the smoking tumbleport, he seemed to make a decision, and herded them out the door and onto the sidewalk without further interrogation. Well, thanks, said Leopold, for the information. They didn't get anything. Okay, whatever. They got, barely any information. Art nodded, pasted on a thin smile, and shoved a plastic bag into Leopold's hands. I can't let you leave without your welcome kit. Inside, you'll find 1 token each for Angel's Flight. It hasn't worked in years, but it's a Sunder Hill tradition, so consider them souvenirs and a coupon for a complimentary meal at the Bright Spot. He gestured to a diner down the block, its neon sign glowing orange against the dusky sky. Try the pie, steer clear of the soup, and tell him Art sent you. Any more questions, or if you need anything at all, my card's in here too. Reach out any time, living or dead. I mean, day or night. He seemed in a hurry to get back inside. And if a survey ghoul visits you, I hope you'll rate me 5 out of 5 stars. Have a great night. Enjoy your time in Sunder. Chapter 18. Leopold and Emmett stood in front of the Bright Spot, a warm but weathered greasy spoon that exuded coziness. Anything served any time was chalked on a sign in its curtained window. through which they could see people snugged into booths and clustered around tables. They only stared, neither of them saying a word. At the sound of a bell, the glass door swung open. An older gentleman in a precariously tall hat emerged and nodded in their direction. Coming in? With a glance at his friend, Leopold seemed to emerge from a trance, then moved slowly toward the entrance. He mumbled a thanks to the stranger, then held the door for Emmett, who took another beat to thaw. Oh, shit. I just lost where I was. Oh. Once inside, Leopold was enveloped by the smell of frying eggs. The place presented in many ways like a hundred diners he'd patronized in L.A. The aroma of overbrewed coffee, the warm hum of conversation, the clink of silverware. Snug red booths lined the walls. A long counter bisected the room. Waitresses in uniforms bustling back and forth behind it, balancing plates of food. And yet there was something so distinctly familiar about this, or unique about this place. A sign on the wall read, "No slack devices allowed." A man in a western jacket dug into a plate of food as he scanned a newspaper that hovered before him, the pages turning on their own. A waitress stopped to warm up his coffee, and as she poured it, a scintillating puff of silver sparks shot up from his mug. "This place is amazing," Emmett whispered. Leopold nodded in mute agreement. Then, feeling like his limbs had gone numb, he wobbled over to a booth and collapsed into it, his bones having taken on the consistency of jelly. Emmett, still fully in possession of his bones, sat down normally, then stared across the table at Leopold. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay what?" "Okay." Emmett leaned forward, his elbows splayed across the chipped brown formica. "You were right." "I was right?" The strange thing was, that strange thing was still happening to Leopold's extremities, his limbs going heavy and his skin prickling. "About everything. I'm never right about everything. Larry, look at me." Leopold couldn't. He was staring down at the menus, the two tomes as fat as dictionaries, then up at the ceiling, where bumpy yellowing tiles were silently rearranging themselves for no obvious reason. A young couple at the next booth sat shoulder to shoulder, chuckling as they watched images dance in the lens of a shared aether focuser. For a moment, Leopold wasn't even sure whether he wanted this to be real. "Larry," Emmett snapped his fingers in front of Leopold's face. "Don't freak out on me again." Leopold shook his head. "I won't. I'm not. Listen, this changes everything." "Hi there," came a cheerful voice. A waitress with horn-rimmed glasses and bobbed brown hair stood at their booth, chewing gum like she was mad at it. Her name tag read K. "Sorry to keep you guys waiting. The kitchen's a hot mess tonight." She snapped her gum and took an order pad from her apron. Oh my god, what the fuck is that word? The transatomizer is on the fritz, so if you came in hankering for a double broiled char, you'll have to go to Izzy's. You're not here for the char, are you? Leopold hesitated. "I don't even know what that is." She laughed out loud, snorting a little, then swatted his arm playfully. "You're hilarious." She smacked her gum again. "All right, what'll it be?" Emmett and Leopold looked at their unopened menus. The cover pictured a smiling man in a chef's hat holding a focuser in one hand and a wooden ladle in the other. "How long is this?" Emmett said, struggling to peel open the pages. They were stuck together with a smear of something that was either strawberry jam or blood. Leopold managed to pry his apart and the book fell open with a heavy thud. 37 chapters, Kay said. "Of course, that's just our late night menu. If you want the full Monty, come back for lunch. So, what'll you have?" Leopold turned a page, then closed the book. His head was too full. He couldn't decide. Remembering Art's recommendation, he said, how about a slice of pie?" She smiled. "What kind? We've got 17. Anything is fine." "Oh, that's my favorite," said Kay. Emmett frowned. "What's your favorite?" "Anything," she said, cocking a hip. "So, one for each of you, or are you just gonna share?" Emmett looked offended. "I don't share food." Do the same. I like Emmett. "2 slices, no problem. That's all?" No," said Leopold hesitantly. "Could we get 2 cups of coffee?" "You got it. Back in a few." She flipped her notepad shut, and with another crack of her gum and a friendly smile at Leopold, she sauntered off. Emmett was the first to speak. "Okay, that was weird." "The whole place is weird." "No, I mean, why'd she keep smiling at you like that?" "I don't know." Apparently you're hilarious. Emmett seemed to consider this. Are you hilarious? I'd say my hit rate is like 49%. That seems generous, Emmett said impassively. He returned his attention to the menu, opened to a page showing a jello mold in which something resembling eyeballs was suspended. Leopold exhaled sharply. Hey. Emmett looked up. Yeah? Why the hell aren't you freaking out? Leopold looked around, then lowered his voice. This is crazy. Emmett closed his menu. No, he said calmly. This is awesome. Sunder is real. You had the visions, then you got the key. The token. The token, whatever. The point is, this is fate. You're supposed to be here, Larry. Yeah, but what if I'm not? He said quietly. What if this was all some big mistake? Emmett hesitated. What are you talking about? From the moment they'd stepped onto Angel's flight, the idea that this had all been an accident had occupied a small but increasingly loud corner of Leopold's thoughts. There'd been no gloss, no fuss, no finesse to his arrival. Everything had been dark and grimy and difficult, like he'd been pushing through a barred door. It was hard to reconcile. His dreams were coming true, but they weren't happening the way he'd dreamed. There hadn't been a key, but a token. There had been no magical door, just an unnamed, half-broken trolley car. There had been no welcome, no acknowledgement of his arrival. Instead, his every move had been trailed by literal garbage. Even now, he was skulking around in Sunder, hiding his identity for reasons that felt important but unclear. Yeah, that's so. I kind of like that though, like the drastic like difference between like his like imagination and how he imagined it would happen and like the reality of it. Because I feel like I personally like when I'm reading stories, I like imagine like, oh my gosh, what if I was in this situation, like all that. But like in reality, like an actual person who like goes through this, bro, we all fucked. We're all fucked. There's no helping. We're all doomed. But anyway, let me see. Where was I? Oh, what if it turns out they don't actually want us here? Said Leopold. What if this was all a screw up at the head office or something? What if the raccoon got its depressed teenagers mixed up? No chance, Emmett was shaking his head. That raccoon did not get its teenagers mixed up. If anyone's supposed to be here, it's you. He pointed at Leopold. This depressed teenager. Sunder has always been your dream. Leopold forced a laugh. She never even mentioned it, you know. Who? My mom. Leopold took a breath. The videotapes were hers, but she never gave them to me. I found them in her stuff after she died. He'd been over it 1,000,000 times in his head, searched his memory again and again. If his mom had so much as breathed a word to him about Sunder, or about the tapes, it would have been seared into his mind. In his more desperate younger years, Leopold had convinced himself she'd left the tapes behind on purpose, that she'd wanted him to find them and to find Sunder. But eventually he'd resigned himself to the disappointing fact that he'd probably never know for sure. Now he was here, in Sunder, grasping for meaning again, grasping for his mother. Look, said Emmett, the only thing we know for sure is that we're here. You're here, he shrugged. And yeah, maybe it's a little grittier than we imagined it would be, but it's real. You really want to know whether we're supposed to be here? He pointed out the window. Let's fuck around and find out. Leopold sank back into his pleather seat, suddenly short of breath. Heat was building behind his eyes. Years of agony were unknotting in his chest, a lifetime of self-doubt being undone in minutes. It was almost too much to bear. Hey, Emmett said quietly. You're not crazy, Larry. And you never were. And that was the end of chapter 18. So, like I said before, Larry is very much hung up on the fact, like, oh my gosh, we're actually in Sunder, but this is not the Sunder that I imagined or that I remembered from my youth. And so he's very, like, put off by this. But meanwhile, Emmett's fucking living his best life. He's like, bro, we're on such an adventure. But it also makes me wonder, because if this is all about Larry, how did like Emmett just get pulled into it? You know, why is he pulled into it? Like, yeah, you gotta have like the comedic character or the logical character, or like even a sidekick character, the main character. But like, I don't know. It's rubbing me the wrong way. You know, Emmett just like likes living his best life. Yeah, but he was also so very logical, and this change in his attitude is very weird to me. Watch, it's gonna be like, oh, your friends were fake all along, some shit like that. We're like flying through this book though. I wonder if it's just because we have like shorter chapters or something, but I feel like we're flying through this. Hold on, let me look at something real quick before we continue. This is feeling, yeah, it's feeling like a fake Emmett. You need Emmett to balance things, and changing his attitude is like a coping mechanism for me. I could see that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm trying to make too many theories at once. But yeah, no. Okay, we're gonna continue on in just a minute. Give me 1 minute. I'm checking something on my phone real quick. Okay. Continuing on. We're going into chapter 19 now. Pretend that 15 is a 19. Okay. Yep. Chapter 19. Oops. Kay slid 2 overfull cups of black coffee toward them, dumped a handful of creamers onto the table, and set 2 chipped plates down with a clatter. Also, do you guys think Florida property taxes are fair? I don't know Florida's property taxes, so I wouldn't know. Emmett mopped up some spilled coffee as Leopold stared in awe at the large golden-crusted wedges of pie. Oozing from the crust was a jammy indigo filling. "Enjoy," she said before swishing off to another table. Once Kay was safely out of earshot, Emmett asked, "What kind of pie do you think it is?" "Blueberry?" Leopold guessed. An aged busboy paused beside their booth to readjust the tub of dishes he was carrying, then glowered into it. Something in the bottom was snarling. "Oh, shut up in there," he growled, using his free hand to slap the dishes with a dirty rag. Emmett and Leopold looked at one another uncertainly, and then, more uncertainly, at the pie. "We have to take at least a couple of bites," Leopold said. "It'd be rude not to," Emmett agreed. Leopold leaned down and gave his slice a sniff. Seemed safe. He picked up his fork and cut a small bite. The texture was convincingly pie-like. Slowly he chewed, and then he nearly fell out of the booth. "Oh my God!" "What?" Emmett said, alarmed. "Is it disgusting?" "No," said Leopold, taking another bite. "It's amazing." "I hope you mean..." Oh, he said amazing. "It's amazing." "I hope you mean amazing." Leopold nodded eagerly, too distracted by the bright flavors going off like fireworks on his tongue. The first bite had started out tasting like perfectly ripe sweet raspberries, but before he'd swallowed had become the best apple pie he'd ever had. The second bite begun as pumpkin, then transformed to a cherry cola spiced with something incongruously savory but delicious, which left a pleasant fizzing sensation in his mouth. Oh, an anything pie, meaning like it can taste like anything. That's kind of cool. Emmett leaned in. "What does it taste like?" "Lots of things. I can't describe it," Leopold said while cutting a third bite. "But it might be the single best thing I've eaten in my entire life." "Seriously?" Emmett picked up his fork and took a huge bite, his eyes widening as he chewed. "Holy shit," he said with his mouth full. "Are we eating magic right now?" "Yeah." The thrill laddered down Leopold's back. "I'm pretty sure we are." As Emmett redoubled his efforts, something drew Leopold's attention to a corner of the diner. Alone in a dim booth sat a girl about his age. She wore a dark green cloak that matched the mossy green of her eyes, its hood pulling around her shoulders. Her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She was beautiful. He couldn't help but register this as she stared at him, with a look bordering on suspicion, until he met her gaze straight on, and she ducked behind one of the bright spots of voluminous menus. Ugh. Florida man found talking about property tax. How long had she been watching? Where were other people? Leopold worried that he and Emmett had been talking too loudly and did not sound at all like magically able tourists from Iowa. "Larry," Emmett was snapping his fingers at Leopold. "Where'd you go?" "Sorry, this girl was staring at me." Emmett looked skeptical. "Where? Wait, don't look!" Emmett turned and sat up in his seat. Obvious as a fire alarm. "The one in the booth by the bathrooms?" Leopold scowled. "Idiot, I told you not to look." Emmett dropped back into his seat. "Okay, is there something about this place that makes you irresistible to women?" Leopold's face went hot. "Shut up." The girl was still pretending to read her menu. "Oh, shit," Emmett hissed. "Is that really what time it is?" He was gaping at a clock on the wall. "It was well after midnight. I told my parents I'd be home by 11:30. He dug out his phone. "I have to text them to at least let them know I'm..." "What the hell?" He turned the screen toward Leopold. It was black with the message in red across the middle. "Slack tech disallowed." Leopold raised his eyebrows, took out his own phone, and tapped its screen. It got the same message. Slack was a pejorative Sundarian term for people with no magical ability, and though Leopold was increasingly sure he wasn't one, his phone apparently qualified as Slack tech. I'm irresistible to women in elder home. Why do you know that? How do you know that? No, actually, I don't want to know. Just kidding. I don't want to know that. All right, time to go, Emmett said, gathering his things. I mean, at this point, your dad's going to straight up kill you when you get home, right? You don't want to be late for your own murder. Leopold didn't laugh. A sudden apprehension had gripped him. Wait, we can't just leave. Why not? How will we get back in again? Art gave us 2 tokens for Angel's Flight, remember? And I'm sure we could get more just by asking. He was super casual about it. Right, Leopold said, relaxing. He fished the coin from the welcome bag and held them gingerly in his hand. After years of waiting for his key to Sunder, the idea that he could come and go as he pleased was so profound he felt lightheaded just thinking about it. Why Angel's Flight had been retired and abandoned was a question for another time. But that was the point. They had time. What are the elder homes called? What? Because nursing homes? Never mind. What? Okay. Where is it? Take both, Emmett said generously. There's no way I'm coming back here without you anyway. Leopold took a bracing breath. Thanks, man, he said. I appreciate that. He dropped the coins back into the small bag and placed it on the table. He'd go home tonight to face his father, who'd rage at him for at least an hour, but the idea didn't fill him with the same dread it usually did. Just knowing this world would be waiting for him, and that the tokens were safely in his possession, was like wearing a suit of armor, one Richter could do nothing to pierce. Check, please. Emmett signaled to Kay while Leopold searched the welcome bag for their meal coupon. Along with a few brochures, a bright green card floated out. It was about the size of a dollar bill and printed on heavy paper. Leopold read it, reread it, then slid the card across the table. Hey, look at this. Emmett snatched up the card. It's a gift certificate, he said, his eyes widening as he scanned the text. For spells. They looked at each other. Mr. Worthington, Leopold said evenly, I'm of the opinion that it would be completely irresponsible of us to leave here tonight without first doing some magic. Emmett nodded seriously. Stupid, even. Kay arrived with the check. You guys have a coupon, is that right? Emmett handed it over, then held up the green certificate. You wouldn't happen to know where we could use this, would you? She squinted at it, then glanced out the darkened window. Tonight? Tonight, the boys said at the same time. Kay pursed her lips, thinking, at this hour, only one place will be open. If I start snoring, I'm sorry, it's midnight right now. You are so fine. If you are falling asleep, that's completely fine. Fall asleep. That's all right. I'll put you to sleep with my voice. Anyway, chapter 20. The blindingly bright sign on the roof read 99 spells and more. The magic store stood between a hamburger joint and a print shop, both closed for the night. Despite the late hour, Sunder Hill's eternal dust still cast its pinkish glow over everything, but the streets were increasingly deserted, and a chill had sharpened the air. Pocket when she reads a book. The voice of an angel. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh fuck, I lost where I was. Oh, despite the late hour, Sunder Hill's eternal dust still cast a pinkish glow over everything, but the streets were increasingly deserted, and a chill had sharpened the air. Leopold, arms folded tight across his chest as they crossed the small parking lot, wished he still had his jacket. It looked like the kind of chain drug emporium that anchored every strip mall in LA, its windows allowing a glimpse of neat aisles and carpeted floors within. The automatic doors whooshed open. They walked into a blast of garish white light and overzealous air conditioning. Voice of a strangled rat, but it died strangled and went to heaven, so it is an angel. Thanks. Thank you, lawyer. I appreciate that. At the front, a young man in a purple vest was passing a woman's purchases over a beeping scanner. A lone shopper meandered with a basket. Signs above each aisle announced categories like cleaning prod and household charms, cold remedies, glamours, and bladder control. Is it raining outside? Oh my god, guys, it's raining. Or like sleeting. I can hear it against the window. Sorry, I got distracted. The in-store speakers were playing an old, cheesy pop song, which was quickly interrupted by a PA announcement. George, Customer Assistance and Beauty and Life Extension. George, Beauty and Life Extension. I hate you. I want rain. You don't deserve it. Actually, I deserve all the rain. So suck it, lawyer. The store was a mismatch of the magical and the mundane. There were shelves of items that didn't seem magical at all, mingled with things that clearly were. Leopold grabbed a plastic-handled basket from a stack by the door, then joined Emmett, who was already browsing. Okay, this isn't magical, Emmett said, turning over a stick of deodorant in his hand. I use this brand, and here, he picked up a box of toothpaste, they carry this at a CVS. Well, CVS sure as hell doesn't carry this. Leopold studied a small black bottle. Never stink. Says it makes you odorless forever. In fact, he squinted at the fine print, if you take enough, you even become odor absorbent, whatever that means. Emmett crossed to the other side of the aisle. No way, he said, voice hushed with wonder. Doppel buddies. What? Seriously? Leopold turned to look. A stack of dusty boxes lined a shelf, each containing one naked, sexless, blank-faced action figure. The stock color was gray, but the label promised the figures would adapt to any skin tone. Grow a new you, read the display. Leopold grabbed a box, turning it reverently in his hands. Remember the episode when Max makes a copy of himself? Yeah, so it would impersonate him at school while he went battling Noxum and Sunder. Leopold dropped a buddy into their basket. But then it turns violent in episode 6 or 7, and he has to hunt it down and... Hold up, Emmett said. Why doesn't anything here have a price tag? Maybe everything's the same price? Leopold said doubtfully. He took the gift certificate from his pocket and studied the back. Wait, this says it's redeemable for only one item. He peered at a line of smaller type. Of low value. 6 or 7. Emmett muttered. Art, you cheap bastard. Shit. Okay, if we can only get one thing, what should it be? They looked at each other. A focuser, they said in unison. I'm assuming a focuser is kind of like a magical phone or like a magical kind of like wand device is what it seems like to me. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it'll explain it. Or maybe it did explain it. I just wasn't listening. To me? Oh, okay. All right, chapter 21. It seems like a magnifying glass. Yeah, a focuser. Eye enhancement. Well, no, because they were saying it was like kind of like a wand or some shit, or like magic focuser, because it focuses their magic, you know. Anyway, chapter 21. Close enough, yeah. Where was I? Oh, chapter 21. Emmett flagged down the only clerk on shift, a gumpy guy, a grumpy, gray-bearded man who'd been stocking supplies in the divination aisle. The name tag on his red polo shirt read George, and when Leopold and Emmett explained what they wanted, George set down his price-tagging gun, cut them off with a single, tired look, and slouched off toward the Aether focusers. With unsubtle irritation, he unlocked the doors of a glass cabinet. All right, what'll it be? Arranged upon the cabinet's, Forrest Gumpy? Yeah, Forrest Gumpy. Arranged upon the cabinet's felt-lined shelves were all manner of focusers, which looked like gleaming camera lenses housed in sleek circular bodies. For a moment they were all Leopold could see, as if a spotlight from heaven were illuminating the dingy cabinet, throwing all else into the darkness. The other focuser was Sunder's answer to the magic wand. Ah, it was a magic wand. Its lens designated to strengthen and concentrate a spark's magical energy. Oh, sparks, what they are, as a magic user, a spark. Magical energy in a particular direction. Spells cast without them were messy, unpredictable, weak, unfocused, and, with rare exceptions, illegal. Yeah, I said that magic wand, obviously. Yeah. Leopold fought a powerful urge to grab one off the shelf without asking. We need your best model, Emmett said confidently, and Leopold nodded. George rolled his eyes. Good ones with primo glass are up top. Contacts, Rolleiflex, Hasselblad. They auto-calibrate to your ability level. The lenses opens up to F/1.2 for maximum spell extraction and are built like Sherman tanks. You could drop one from an airplane and probably still get a decent cast out of it. Then with a sidelong glance, you planning on dropping yours out of an airplane? No, Leopold laughed nervously. Then I'd recommend one of these. He pointed to a lower shelf stocked with focusers that were more compact but still sturdy looking. Emmett took out the gift certificate. Which one will this get us? Scanning it. George's irritation blossomed into unveiled anger. He studied Leopold and Emmett a beat, then stalked away, muttering, "Goddamn teenagers, always wasting my time." "Wait," Emmett called after him. "We're serious customers. Do you take regular world credit cards?" Quietly, Leopold said, "You have a credit card?" "It's my mom's," Emmett answered under his breath. "For emergencies." George's only response was to scowl and point at a massive sign by the entrance, which read, "Cash only." Undaunted, Leopold and Emmett rushed toward the register, where George was trying to slip out a door marked "Employee Exit." "Is there anywhere around here we can get some Sunder money?" Leopold called after him. "An ATM or something?" George finally turned around, incredulous. "What the hell is Sunder money?" Emmett and Leopold traded a glance. I can't remember Max actually buying anything on the show," Leopold whispered. "I just remember, I've got cash," Emmett exclaimed triumphantly, pulling a few bills from his wallet. 10, no, 20 bucks. You take American dollars?" "Are you kids stoned?" the clerk said flatly. "No, sir," Leopold said, straightening to his full height. George considered them for a moment, then took the money from Emmett's outstretched hand. "All right, whatever," he said, nodding toward the cabinet. "I might have something for you." "Sup, Lemus? You're a little late. Quick recap after chapter." Okay, so we just finished a chapter. Basically, where we last left off, there was the raccoon that was on fire who gave Leopold who gave Leopold the token. Emmett and Leopold were talking. Emmett was like, "Dude, you're fucking crazy. You're seeing shit." And Leopold was like, "Yeah, you're probably right. So I'm gonna go home." But as he was getting in his car to leave, Emmett came back, found him, and was like, "Dude, I totally believe you because I'm starting to see shit." And so then they find the entrance to Sunder, or the trolley that takes them to Sunder. They go to Sunder. They are now in Sunder World. Or Sunder Hill, I should say, because it's Sunder World, but it's in LA, so it's Sunder Hill. And they're basically going and walking around Sunder Hill, like exploring. Like, they went to a diner and had a pie that tasted like anything because he ordered anything pie. And now they're getting a magic wand, and basically that's what's happening. So the Sunder world is real. He's not hallucinating it, I think. I don't know. There could be a plot twist later. But yes, they're on their little adventure. Can I get? I know pie sounds really good. I want blueberry pie. But yes, that's the recap for you, Lemus. Hopefully you got that all. But yes. All right, we're gonna keep going because we're almost there. Yes, no problem. It says chapter 15 up there, but we're actually in chapter 22. I just forgot to make more of this slide, so we're just gonna go with that. Chapter 22. What he had for them was a piece of shit. The focuser in Leopold's hand was made of plastic, small enough to slip into his pocket. Its fraying wrist strap printed with the cartoon images of cats and ice cream cones. Funcast was stamped on the back. George had thrown in a couple of disposable precast spells. Circular, semi-opaque filters that fit over the tiny lens, which was so badly scratched it looked like someone had tried to sand wood with it. But it was a focuser, and it was theirs. They stood in the alley outside 99 Spells, Emmett tilting the precast up to a slant of streetlight so he could make out the writing around their edges. "We've got one called Lil Levitator and one called Make It Snow," he said. "Seems pretty self-explanatory." He held them out to Leopold. "You pick." Leopold chose the little levitator, then slipped his wrist through the focuser's strap. Cigarette butts and discarded precasts were scattered nearby. Clearly, they weren't the first people to hang out here, casting cheap spells. Suddenly, his throat went dry. It was happening. He was about to do magic. Real magic, on purpose. This night had been so surreal that he'd hardly stopped to process it all, to feel the weight of the moment. Years of dreaming, of doubting, had all come to this. "Don't be in your head right now," Emmett nodded at the focuser in Leopold's hand. "Nike." Leopold frowned. "What?" "Just do it, Larry." "Dumbass," Leopold said, cracking again a grin. And Emmett smiled to match. There was no one at either end of the alley. No one was watching. Leopold was hardly even aware of the cold. He fit the precast levitation spell over the focuser's lens and snapped it into place with a satisfying click. The Funcast's only movable part were its flimsy aperture ring and a single cast button on the side. His finger hovered over the button. "Well, here goes nothing." He triggered the button, and the lens flashed dimly. There was a robotic whisper at the edge of hearing, the auto incantation, and then he was flung into the air and flipped upside down. Leopold cried out as his stomach did a somersault, and his car keys dropped from his pocket. Emmett shouted in alarm and made a swipe for Leopold, but he was too late. Graffitied bricks blurred past as Leopold soared feet first toward the clouds. But his panic proved unnecessary. About 20 feet off the ground, he came to a sudden halt, still upside down. "You okay?" Emmett called out anxiously. "I'm okay," Leopold said, his heart racing. "I think I aimed too high." Blood rushing in his head, he took hold of the focuser again, and this time pointed it at the ground. He pushed the button and flipped upright, the pavement and the pink sky trading places. His confidence slowly building, Leopold twisted the plastic aperture and descended a few feet. He twisted it the other way and rose again, bouncing to a stop a little higher than before. "I think you're getting it," Emmett shouted. Leopold aimed the focuser at a nearby wall, pushed the cast button, and was yanked sideways until his feet met brick. He stood, then, at a 90-degree angle to the wall, casting a huge shadow across the alley below. It was dizzying and surreal. With his head gently spinning, he took a few exploratory steps. His shoes stuck like they were glued in place until the moment he lifted them, when they came away with easy pops. From this vantage, he could see the rooftops of Sunder Hill. He lingered a moment, gazing out across Sunder's dazzling main street, where a few night owls were leaving a beautiful Art Deco theater. The movie titles on its marquee signs spelled out in runic Sunderese. A few streets away, the top floor of the fortress-like Sunder Bank and Trust was encircled with angry, swirling mist. Some sort of defense mechanism, Leopold reckoned, against thieves or something worse. Standing proud at the edge of it all, the tallest building in Sunder Hill was a towering pyramid of glass. Leopold recognized this as the headquarters of the department, where Sunder's governing bureaucrats and decision-makers had their offices. Reflecting the sky, its mirrored surfaces were a beacon of gold and pink that stood in stark contrast to the dim, unmagical neighborhoods that rolled out endlessly beyond it. It was all here, all knowable, all finally within Leopold's grasp. There was a jangle below as Emmett scooped up Leopold's fallen keys. "You good?" he called up to Leopold. "Yeah." Leopold could feel something strange coursing through him, a stinging behind his eyes, a fullness in his chest. It was, he realized, happiness. Oh, he's finally happy, guys, after so long. He's been real depressed. Let's see. The next chapter is 23. Yeah, we'll read it. It's not too many pages long. Let me take a sip of my drink real quick. All right, here we go. Chapter 23. "I still don't understand why it didn't work for you," said Leopold. They were walking back toward Angel's Flight, passing the bright spot, its windows now dark. It was probably that crappy focuser, or maybe that snow precast was expired. "Seriously, it's not a big deal," Emmett replied, his eyes on a service station at the corner, where a lone man stood gassing an old boat-like sedan. Oh my god, are Emmett and Leopold about to become, friends to enemies? Is that what's about to happen? I could feel it in my bones. Because Emmett's gonna get jealous that Leopold is, like, super powerful or some shit. You know? I don't know the ending of the story. There's no spoilers. I don't know the story. I'm literally reading it with you guys. Real time, okay? Where was it? There was a wistful quality to his voice when he spoke. "I don't really care that much whether or not I can do magic." 3 times Emmett had tried and failed to get the fun cast to work, to no avail. Finally, he'd insisted that getting home before dawn was more important, and Leopold had begrudgingly relented. Still, he couldn't deny the glaring differences between their experiences. In Emmett's hands, the focuser had seemed clumsy, alien, but to Leopold, casting had felt natural, like something he'd done 1,000 times before. The hum of power in his hands as he held the focuser, a sensation embedded in his cell memory. Somewhere in his marrow, the feeling fit, and he allowed himself, for the space of a breath, to picture more. Him, Leopold Berry, among the most powerful sparks in Sunder, entrusted with protecting the magical world from shambling, snarling night realm beasts, learning colossal spells, wielding some fat lens focuser to blast a Noxum with a bolt of death magic, then dragging its body into a black, bubbling containment pit. The fantasy was so grand, he was almost embarrassed for himself. Leopold cleared his throat, cleared his mind, then returned his eyes to Emmett. You sure you don't want to try again before we leave? I'm sure, Emmett said, shifting his gaze skyward. Sunder was always yours, dream man, not mine. I was happy to be along for the ride then, and I'm happy to be along for the ride now. Leopold nodded, ever grateful for his friend's even temper. They walked for a while in affable quiet, taking in the final blocks of Sunder Hill's dreamy pink-hued cityscape before the Angel's Flight station. They passed a travel agency, its window advertising trips to Sunders around the country. There was a flash sale on Tumbleport tours to Muncie, and then a grand hotel, this one firmly secured to the ground, with the tuxedoed valet standing outside a lobby gleaming with chandeliers. Nearby, a garbage man was tossing trash bags into a portable hole he dragged along behind him. The clatter the bags made when they finally hit the bottom several seconds later was an almost inaudible tink. You know what's weird, said Emmett, his eyes shifting to Leopold. In the show, there were outer realm creatures walking around in Sunder, Orax, Perishers, the occasional well-behaved rust fiend. But can you remember seeing any tonight? I think I have a theory, which I'm gonna go over again. I think I said it earlier, but anyway. Where was it? Oh, Leopold paused, trying to recall, then shrugged. In the show, Max rode a flying horse, he pointed out. I don't think whoever made Sunderworld was super concerned with accuracy. It occurred to him that the show might have fudged or exaggerated some details to make Sunder appear less real. The more artificial the fantasy seemed, the less likely some overly curious slack would go looking for an entrance. The same theory might also explain the show's bargain basement production values. Leopold was about to suggest this to Emmett when he realized Emmett was no longer beside him, but had darted off to examine a nearby statue. Check this out, he said, beckoning to Leopold as he bent to study a plaque at its base. Emmett could never resist a good informational plaque. It said this guy founded Sunder, Charles Vigdor. Leopold joined him at the foot of the statue. Sunder had a founder? He gazed up at a stocky man cast in 20 feet of bronze, clad in bronze cowboy boots, a bronze 10-gallon hat, and a giant bronze mustache that covered half his face. This says he drilled the world's first Aether well, right here in Sunder Hill in 1909. Emmett began to read aloud. Striking what's known as the vein, Mr. Vigdor tapped into a seemingly limitless deposit of Aether that attracted sparks from around the world to Los Angeles. Thanks to its discovery, magical technology had progressed more in the past 100 years than the previous 1,000. The pink clouds flickered without warning, popping on and off like a faulty bulb. What the hell? Emmett said, looking up from words he could no longer read. The sky went completely dark. Down the street, someone shouted, "Oh, come on!" Aether outage? Leopold guessed, remembering the angry guy from the Tumbleport station. Whatever it is, it can't be good, Emmett said. Just then, they heard the distant, eerie wail of an emergency siren. And that was the end of chapter 23. I think we could probably get through like one or two more chapters. Oh, maybe just one chapter, because this next chapter is a little longer. Also, if you hear my dog, it's because he's deciding to dig in my chair again, so. Okay, chapter 24. The siren pitched slowly up and down. Pale moonlight shone across rooftops all along the block, but otherwise everything was enveloped in shadow and gloom. Even the street lamps and lighted shop windows had gone dark. And then a voice rang out from every direction, issuing as if from loudspeakers. It was the same male announcer they'd heard several times before. This is the emergency warning system. Please proceed to the nearest refuge point to await further instructions. Refuge point, Emmett repeated, sounding, I bet they're going to find a monster. Sounding a little worried now. He pulled out his phone to use as a light, only to be reminded it didn't work. Yeah, it's definitely time to go home. Leopold stayed rooted to the spot. His pulse was racing. There was unease in the air, the promise of danger. And yet Leopold felt no compulsion to flee. In fact, he was experiencing an overwhelming surge of protectiveness for this absurd magical place. Something was wrong, and he wanted to know what it was. More than that, he realized, he wanted to help. Life had changed irrevocably for him tonight. Hell, he'd done magic tonight. Leopold knew he couldn't stay here forever. He knew he'd have to go home and deal with his normal life eventually, but he wanted to make sure that Sunder would still be here when he came back, because he was definitely coming back. Larry? Proceed directly to the nearest refuge point, the announcement repeated, and comply with all instructions given by the paladins or peace officers. At the word paladins, Leopold straightened. Damn, Emmett said with a sigh. Did he just say paladins? Leopold was fighting a smile. Yeah. We have to snake. Oh, okay, it's getting to that point of the night where I'm going to screw up every fucking word. Leopold was fighting a smile. Yeah. We have to stay now, don't we? I think we do, Mr. Worthington. After Richter kills you, my parents are going to kill me. Double homicide. Worth it, though, right? Hell yeah, Emmett said, almost laughing. Then he turned and shouted into the empty air. Does anyone know the way to the refuge point? This way. The voice had come from the sidewalk across the street, where a group of people were moving through a shaft of moonlight. They all appeared to be heading in the same direction, though they didn't seem to be in much of a hurry. Leopold and Emmett jogged over to them. Emmett asked what was going on. Noxum alarm, said an older man in a coat too heavy for the weather. Nothing to worry about, probably just a drill. Noxum were the most feared monsters in Sunder. While they ranged widely in size and lethality, minor Noxum could usually be dispatched without calling in the paladins. Major Noxum... Oh, I skipped a page. Major Noxum were terrifying creatures of another order altogether, and in the show were known for murderous rampages that claimed dozens of lives before they could be put down. Sounds like kaiju. Does this happen a lot? Asked Leopold, a thrill going down his spine. Once or twice a month, said someone whose voice they recognized. It was George from 99 Spells. He turned on the flashlight and the beam bobbed ahead of them. First time they've cut the Aether, though, said a yawning lady. She sounded more tired than worried. I was just about to cast myself to sleep. In fact, none of them seemed worried. They had the slouching pace of high school kids during a routine fire drill. Larry, Emmett's elbow dug into his ribs. Look. Out of the shadows came a small troop of uniformed young men and women. They strode down the middle of the street, shoulder to shoulder, in tailored green paladin uniforms and tall brown boots. Bandoliers studded with vials of Aether across their chests, and they carried serious-looking focusers, the lenses thick glass glinting in the moonlight. Thank you for your service, George called out. Leopold and Emmett had once made paladin uniforms for themselves, repurposed from old Boy Scout stuff, costumes for their homespun version of Sunderworld. Most young sparks were required to serve for a time in the Paladin Corps, widely respected as Sunder's first and best line of defense against the Noxum. Max's mentor had been a Paladin commander, battle-scarred from the last Noxum War. They hadn't yet reached the refuge point when the siren began to wind down. A new announcement echoed, and their group came to a sudden halt. I choked. This has been a test of the emergency warning system. You may return to your homes. Thank you for your cooperation. There were murmurs of irritation, several people muttering choice words for the inconveniences they'd endured. Do you think the lights will come back on? Leopold whispered to Emmett. Before Emmett could respond, a pyramid of boxy televisions blared to life in the window of a nearby electronics shop, the jarring light and loud sound crackling the silence. A dozen flickering screens showed the same footage. A woman with cropped white hair and black-rimmed glasses, fielding questions from a podium. A chyron across the bottom read, Executive Angela Ramirez's new conference, earlier today. Her voice boomed. Leopold winced even as he pushed closer to the screens. I want to assure you, the woman was saying, that we are making every effort to ensure the Aether supply remains uninterrupted. I know these outages have been inconvenient for everyone, but the situation is temporary. They're showing this again, George complained. The woman in the bathrobe shushed him. Executive was an honorific reserved for the elected leader of Sunder, the head of its small but powerful governing body. In Sunderworld, the executive had been portrayed by an older male actor who'd given the character a sarcastic edge and a quick temper. As he watched the genuine articles speak, Leopold had a dreamlike moment. He was both exhausted and exhilarated. His mind... Oh, hi, Clock. Welcome in. We're doing our reading stream. Welcome in. We're reading the Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry. Very good book. We're at chapter 20-something. 24, 25 now? I think it's 24. But yes, oh, have you read it, Clock? This is my first time reading it, and I think pretty much everyone here is first time hearing it. So I'm very excited. I have some theories. I have some theories that I'm gonna go over before the end of stream. So it's good. It's really good so far. I'm enjoying it. Where was I? La 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 la. Oh, where was I? Oh, there it is. As he watched the genuine article speak, Leopold had a dreamlike moment. He was both exhausted and exhilarated, his mind running on fumes and adrenaline. The garish blue glare of the TV's Oh my gosh. The garish blue glare of the TV's contrasted against the dark around him, making the cold night feel milky and soft. After so many years of telling himself Sunder was fake, now he had to keep reminding himself it was real. That right now he was standing in the middle of a Sunder street watching the Sunder executive field questions. It was not only real, but so real. Bro, said Emmett quietly. Leopold smiled. I know. Off screen, a reporter asked, Executive, is there any connection between the Aether shortages and the recent uptick of Noxum attacks? None at all, she said firmly. The shortages are due to unusually extreme seasonal fluctuations in our Aether wells and should resolve themselves before long. The attacks were isolated incidents and nothing our brave paladins couldn't handle. Even so, I would like to remind everyone to take basic anti-Noxum precautions and to conserve Aether whenever possible. Another reporter. And what about the search for for a channeler? Couldn't that offer relief on both fronts? Leopold felt a sudden shock at the word channeler, a wire pulling taut within him. Channeler, the most powerful magical being on the planet. More specifically, an extremely rare spark that came along only once a generation or so, who could kill Noxum with little effort and summon vast amounts of Aether from the air, enabling them to cast substantial spells without a focuser. On the show, Max had discovered he was the channeler, and spent much of the first season honing his untapped abilities. Are you hearing this? Emmett hissed. Leopold nodded numbly. Emmett hit him in the arm. That's gotta be you. Leopold tensed, apprehension radiating from him. He turned sharply to Emmett. Don't even joke about that. I'm not. Will you two hush? Said Bathrobe Lady. Several reporters were asking about the channeler search now, all talking over one another. And Executive Ramirez had to raise her hand for quiet. She adjusted her glasses and continued. The search is ongoing, she said with a brittle smile. That's all I have time for today. Thank you. With a respectful nod, she turned and walked away while the camera held on the empty podium. The sky came alight with pink clouds again, though dimmer than before, and the streetlights with it, jolts of static crackling the air as they snapped on. The process was staggering so that the lamps and neon signs at the end of the block lit up first, then rolled toward them until they were awash in color. A billboard advertising the services of a magical injury lawyer flickered on across the street, and the group of irritable stragglers slowly dispersed, leaving Emmett and Leopold alone. The pair stood frozen, still watching the blaring televisions, as if hypnotized. That was Executive Angela Ramirez earlier today. On the dozen screens, the camera had cut to a pair of news anchors inside a studio. As always, if you think you know someone who might be a channeler, contact the department right away. A phone number flashed across the screen. They both stared at it. Larry, Emmett whispered. Leopold couldn't move. Mr. Barry, Emmett turned to face him. We need to find a phone. Why do I have a feeling he's not going to be the channeler? Can I call the department? Yeah. Department. No, Leopold said sharply. There was a sudden electrical pop from the street behind them. Emmett turned to look. When he turned back, he grasped Leopold by the shoulders and spun him around. Across the street, lit from the inside and shining brightly, was a phone booth. And that was the end of chapter 24. Okay, here's my theory. Okay, Clock. So, I'm thinking, obviously, I feel like this is all real. Like, he's actually in Sunderworld and all that stuff. I had this theory before when I was reading earlier. So, the mom had these tapes to Sunderworld that nobody knew about.
Lawyer_cheese says poopy poop poop you left your TTS on so now I said boo oi stinky. 67 get trolled.
Love that, thank you. But anyway, so the mom had all these tapes of Sunderworld and of this the main character in it being Max. I wonder if she was also part of Sunderworld, maybe, and Max maybe the real dad of our main character. You know, just throwing that out there because I feel like the dad right now is kind of like not the greatest. Um, and then I wonder if like even with listening to like 65% of this zero understanding, I'm like slowly understanding it, you know? I'm like we're slowly putting it together. It's a bit of a trip, but I think I like that. I think that maybe like Max's journey, like from the TV show that our main character watched growing up, I think was maybe the past, and now that they're in present Sunder, things are much more different. It's kind of like a mind fuck. Yeah, a little. I don't know, but it's very I'm very much enjoying it. It's very good so far. I am going to stop there though because let's see, how long is chapter 25? Yeah, chapter 25 is oh, actually it's only a page long. Oh, should we read it? Do I want to read one more chapter? Should we just read one more chapter? It's really short. It's a short one. We'll read chapter 25. We've got time. We'll read chapter 25 real quick, okay? Okay. Chapter 25. Leopold and Emmett crammed into the small booth, Leopold wrestling the rusted accordion door shut behind them. Ivy had snaked its way inside the poorly sealed space, the interior half devoured by vines that Emmett forcibly tore away from the heavy black receiver. Finally, he lifted the phone from its cradle, pressing it into Leopold's hands as if it were his firstborn child. Call. This is crazy. Leopold gazed at the scuffed phone, shaking his head. A dial tone buzzed insistently. I can't be the channeler. Why the hell not? Are you kidding? Maybe because I've only ever cast one spell like 20 minutes ago? So what? Emmett countered. Did Max start off casting tons of spells right away? That doesn't mean anything. If I'm the channeler, why was it so hard to get here? And why did it take so long to get my token? And who knows? You probably weren't ready yet. Emmett tried to gesture out the window and in the process nearly slapped Leopold in the face. Isn't it obvious? Leopold flinched. Isn't what obvious? All of it. The tapes, the show, the last 6 years of your life. There's a reason you were obsessed with Sunderworld. There's a reason you kept seeing into the Sunder. It wasn't random, and it wasn't just because your mom died. You found those tapes because you were supposed to. Emmett pointed toward the pyramid of TVs across the street, and this time he really did hit Leopold in the face. Ow, muttered Leopold. What the hell? Pay attention. They're running out of Aether. The Noxum situation is worse than they want to admit. They're overdue for a channeler. Emmett looked at him seriously. What are the odds that everything you've been through, all these years, was some big coincidence? Leopold tensed. He'd always felt, deep down, that there had been more at work behind the scenes of his life than chance and randomness. That there had to be some meaning, some purpose in all he'd experienced. Emmett was only saying something he'd thought himself 1,000 times. Leopold was too practical to lie, and the truth was, he didn't want to. He remembered casting the spell in the I choked. Casting the spell in the alley. How natural the focuser had felt in his hands. How quickly and easily he'd mastered the basic technique. Larry, Emmett tried again. These people need you. Leopold's arms prickled with goosebumps. With one last look at the TV screens across the street, he raised the phone to his ear and began to dial. And that is chapter 25, which we are going to leave there because the next chapter is a little longer and I don't think we have enough time to read it. But we don't leave just yet because we're going to go raid someone. Also, boo, I know, I'm so sorry. But also, tomorrow we're streaming Silent Hill F. I'm not going to read more because it's almost like 11 for me and I got to go to bed. But we are playing Silent Hill F tomorrow, so if you want to come check me out then, go ahead. We're getting into the game, you know. I'm beating up monsters. It's great fun. I only get scared occasionally. Only occasionally.
Lawyer_cheese says read more. I paid for 11 more minutes.
You did not pay for 11 more minutes. What? Can I suggest? Yes, you most definitely can, Lemus. We are gonna go raid someone now. So let's set that up, or let me get that set up. Who are we raiding today, Lemus? Ghost Queen K. Okay. Ghost queen. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. But yes, stream tomorrow. Hopefully I will see you guys then. If not, I will catch you later. But have a good night, day, whatever it may be for you travelers, and bye-bye.